Hello everyone and welcome. Make a cup of your favorite drink and get comfortable because this is a wonderful time for news stories from YellowCat. Send your own stories in the comments below and maybe they'll be in our new video. Subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed yet. Let's get started. Redditors who walked off the job without notice, what straw broke the camel's back? Part 6. Over the 3 years, things had gotten bad. They were going badly at work, but I didn't know it. My boss told me he could find the rest of the raise in 6 months if I could wait. That's how much of a raise I got. After 2 weeks, I learned that the company was failing. I felt very stressed. I learned that my boss made a lot of bad decisions over the next year, which was bad for the company. The story went that the company would be sold to someone else, he would no longer run the business, but instead move into accounting and stay there, and then a new CEO would take over. So I hope to work for a company that gets better with a new boss. After the story stopped, I learned that he is now a partner and will still be in charge. He brought the business to its knees and then bought half of it for almost nothing of what it was worth before. I asked for more money over and over. On the same day every year, he finally says no and some other rude and silly things. There's a lot more I could say, but I don't wanna. I first asked for a raise because I was doing the work of 3 people and I took over the website and turned it into a retail powerhouse. Used to only make $500 a month, but now it makes $1,200 to $3,300 a month, depending on the season. After shipping and product costs, they usually make $90,000. Before I asked for a $19,000 a year raise, I was making great money for the company in that way for 2 years. I made a strong case for why I should be paid more. At first, I only got half, but he lied to me for a year and said I would get the rest. He basically told me that if I wanted that $10,000, I would have to work in sales and get commission. That's the work of 4 people. He was so effing cheap that he wouldn't give me an extra $9,000. This was true even though I built him a website that made a lot of money, took care of all of his IT needs, designed his graphics, and fixed things around the stores. I didn't want to work for the jerk because it was unethical to run a business into the ground and force the owner to sell, then buy half of the business and act like he's helping the owner. He messed up the business for the owner. Was a scumbag boss. When I quit, he was giving me about 6 hours of vacation a month and $50,000 a year. I literally interviewed on Monday for the one job I applied for, talked about pay rates, accepted, and then the next day I walked into my boss's office and told him I was leaving. He got really mad and said it was so unprofessional not to give him 2 weeks' notice. And I snapped back at him, I gave you 12 months' notice. 12 months when I asked for a raise last year and you promised you would give me it in 6 months. I gave you 12 months and you told me to pound sand last week. F you. I've had my new job for 5 years, and every year they give me a 4% raise. I now make $77,000 a year and I get about 18 hours of vacation every month. I enjoy my job more than the other one I had. Sometimes, it really is the culture of where you work that you need to escape. I worked for a building company that was owned by a family. What a great job. They taught me a lot about a specific area of work when I was very young. We had just solved a big theft case. Our IT manager stole Apple products worth $100,000 from the business. He was arrested, and I was one of the few people who were subpoenaed. It was really big. Do not forget that he was black either. Well, one day, a manager for a part of the company stormed into my office and said, "I'm quitting." As a side note, this guy did it all the time. I thought he was having another temper tantrum and would soon be done with it. Then he started to talk about why he was leaving. The CEO was mad at him for hiring more people, but every good candidate was turned down. When the manager asked the CEO why, he said, "We don't hire those people, we already have one." That they're not gonna hire black people without saying it. I was a little scared when I heard this, but I wasn't sure what to think because this guy was known to exaggerate and be dramatic. I didn't want to believe it because I loved my job, but now I see why. We said our goodbyes, and I gave him his last check. After about an hour, the CFO storms into the office and walks down the hall. He was usually very loud, and he was on the phone with the CEO. As he walked by my office, I heard him say, "We don't hire ends because they lie and steal." My jaw hit the ground and tears came into my eyes. This was not only gross, but it also hit home. My stepdad's black, and he raised me since I was 9 years old. He is truly such a lovely person, and he holds our family together. This was the first time I saw racism in its true form. Broke my heart to think that guys like my dad are grouped with guys like Mr. IT Criminal because of the color of their skin. I walked into the office of the HR manager and quit right then. While I'm grateful for the experience because it helped me get a job without a degree, I really dislike that company. I worked as a social worker for many years. I only want to try to make the world a better place. I worked hard and made connections to get to the point where I was in charge of a whole department and my only boss was the CEO of the agency where I was transferred or promoted. After meeting with the staff I took over, I learned that almost every single one of them was leaving. They were going back to graduate school or looking for work elsewhere for different reasons, but they all felt that the CEO didn't value them or the clients we serve. For example, the man locked the bathrooms outside of our homeless services department so that our building wouldn't become a public toilet. After having a meeting with my boss to talk about how to keep employees, different benefit packages, more flexible hours, giving employees thanks, etc., the subject of pay naturally comes up in the conversation. I talk about new government funding that I helped him get, as well as other ways for private donors to help. The CEO looks at me and says, "Random user 3005, the women who work there didn't go into social work for the money. They need to either get another job or marry someone who makes more money than them if they want to make more money." Before the meeting was over, I already knew that we wouldn't agree on this scenario. It's awful to have good intentions, but be met by a CEO who doesn't seem to care about the people who make this agency work. I used the rest of the day to call an emergency meeting to tell my staff that I was quitting, wish them luck, and offer my services as a reference for any future jobs. I took care of as many loose ends as I could the next day. For example, I called our government oversight to let them know what was going on and told the board of directors why I had to quit so quickly. I didn't have any plans for the rest of the day, but being able to walk free outside into the sun after dropping my keys and ID badge in his office was pure bliss. It made me feel so good to ignore him when he called my name and said, "Let's talk about this." It made me sad to leave a good program for the community, but I won't work for a company that doesn't value its employees. The agency lost the money I helped them get, and soon after, they lost the money the government had given them for our program in the first place. If you're still reading, then I have a little update that you may like. The misogynistic a-hole had a heart attack and croaked. And I'm not saying that I'm responsible, but the increased stress from that couldn't have been good for him. It made me sad to quit social work, but maybe I did make the world a better place. Which actions of your HOA or neighbors made you dislike them? Part 6. Just outside ATL, put crushed white rocks around flower beds and mailbox posts, just like 11 others in the neighborhood, including the HOA president's next-door neighbor. Received warning in the mail, followed the next day by a fine of $250 with a note that it would be repeated each week until the stone was removed. I took pictures of everyone in the neighborhood with crushed white rock in their yards and presented to the HOA president. Didn't care. Presented at HOA meeting. Didn't care. Racked up $2,250 in fines before my lawyer sent a letter telling the HOA to F off or fine everyone else doing the same thing. Letter stopped immediately. Same HOA, houses on my street in the hillside. Lost about 4 inches of soil on the low side of my house and requested permission to build a retaining wall and then backfill what was lost to prevent erosion under my foundation. Denied. Made second request along with contractor estimate of damage to my home if not approved. Denied. Lawyer sent HOA a bill for the purchase price of my home stating they were impeding my ability to maintain the property according to HOA standards. President came over demanding to know why I was billing the HOA. I showed him the erosion next to my house and asked if they would start billing me if it slid down into the neighbor's yard. Approved. Maybe a covenant issue, not simply an HOA? You decide. This one influenced my childhood. Because my family was in the military, we were stationed overseas every 4 years and spent most of our time in base housing. That is, prior to our relocation to Michigan from Georgia. The two states are very different from one another with far less southern hospitality. My parents relocated to a lovely subdivision that was a branch of an even nicer one. Our less than pleasant subdivision had no signage, but you could tell the difference in the size of the lots and the way the neighbors generally treated each other and their own lawns. My parents, however, made the decision to move around the corner to a nicer subdivision with a much nicer house and larger lot right after I graduated from high school. That's where the problem started. There was a lake in this subdivision, so you were either drawn to it or not, smooth divisions that pervaded the neighborhood again. The subdivision board had a well-defined plan, was establishing a park-like environment, and had just started enforcing decisions based on aesthetics and some recently passed bylaws. The issue was that these bylaws interfered with my parents' intentions to build a fence and a swimming pool in their backyard. The main issue was that the bylaws were improperly passed and never documented. Their real issue was that my mom had become a teacher and later obtained a law degree after leaving the military. My mom called BS when they posted a cease and desist notice regarding the renovations we were doing in our backyard. I'd like to see them effing try it, was my dad's reaction when they said they would tear down our fence. Before using the GFY method, my family tried appeasement for a while. Mind you, this is where things got to. This board was just being unyielding. If you wish to have a pool in Michigan, you must have a fence. It relates to liability and safety. The owners of lake houses felt that fences were against their park aesthetic and offensive to look at, so they didn't think they were necessary. My parents made the offer to install a really nice fence, not some cheap chain link thing, but I declined. Others have similar problems with the board and have offered numerous solutions only to have them rejected. This power-tripping board was obviously against fences and believed they had the final say. It got so bad that a new buyer with small children was unable to obtain approval for any kind of fence in their wooded lot, which cost another homeowner the sale of their home. My parents chose to take the nuclear option and carried it out after witnessing the board's resistance and hearing other people's terrifying stories. When we received the stop order notice, work on the pricey white vinyl fence had already started, been completed, and the pool equipment was being delivered. Subsequently, I saw something that still makes me cry. You see, these a-holes had been putting on a show about this for months. They even went so far as to put a stop to us by hiring a lawyer. Everyone was invited to a sit-down by this lawyer. No, they rented a boardroom at a nearby restaurant, not someone's living room. My dad asked me to go with Mom as backup because he didn't want anything to do with this, knowing he had a temper problem and his 12-gauge, which he refers to casually as his southern hospitality, would not be welcome. I had no idea what I was going to see. I agreed blithely, turning up in my cargo pants and polo shirt. The others are dressed in ties and suits. When we get there, the entire board of old grumpy guys is waiting for us. My mother takes a seat, they begin discussing the expenses and how to settle, that they had to hire an attorney, and that she will be responsible for the costs since she started the issue, and then she abruptly ends the conversation. "What makes you think you have any legal right to impose this rule?" she asks. Turning to their lawyer, they all say, Miss, ma'am, we had a vote. Next, my mother does it. "Really?" she asks, laying out the recorded bylaws on the table. "'Cause it's not in here." Awkward moment of silence. Documents were combed through, stammering. Seeing her chance, my mother goes on saying, "I believe that you had a vote, but it was incorrect. According to these bylaws, changes can only be made with the consent of the majority of the lots. Not a majority of the total lots, but a majority of the votes cast went to you. Therefore, that vote never passed, and what you actually had was a plurality. The voting rules are available here," points out Paige, "and it is evident that the official bylaws never amended the rule. Most likely because it never happened. Now that you're trying to force the bylaws on me, not one of you has even bothered to read them or abide by them. Well, I can tell you that's not gonna happen. Thank you, gentlemen. I will not be paying a dime for this or your attorney. Have a good day." Then she stands up, gives me the "get the F up, son" look, and walks away. As she was leaving, they even had the audacity to try to give her a lawyer's invoice, but she simply waved it off. That was the day I decided I wanted to practice law. Surfing fools like that, my mom showed me what it was to stand up to those who had let power go to their heads. If you want to watch the part 5, click the link here. We're very, very glad to see you all in the comments again. Many, many thanks for your support.